In this video, I'm going to show how to create a relationship between two objects using the VMware Aria Operations Management Pack Builder. Now, the first thing to note is we've already defined our objects that we want to create relationships between, so we can move on to the Relationships tab here. Underneath this tab, we can see all of the relationships we've defined, which so far is none. So we can go in and add a new relationship. And it's important to note that all relationships defined by the Management Pack Builder are parent and child. So for each one, you'll have to choose a parent and a child corresponding to it. So in this case, I'm going to create a relationship between the cluster and then the VM. This next step, you define a match, a way to associate these two objects together. So this is all of the attributes we have for the rubric cluster. So we can use its ID here. And then we can look at the rubric VM, and we can see that, even though it has an ID, that's not going to be the rubric cluster's ID. And we can see down here we have a primary cluster ID, which would be the cluster's ID. So here we can make a very simple connection between the two of these and save that. And now we've made a relationship between two of our objects. However, that was a very simple case, and not all cases are going to be simple. So let's look at another scenario here. So let's make another relationship, and this time we're going to try to connect the vCenter virtual machine to the rubric VM. Since these two things are going to potentially be related, this is a good one for us to create a relationship between. So the first one is, we're now looking at the parent of the virtual machine, and we can say, let's take this VM instance UUID, and let's connect that to, I see. So the rubric VM ID is virtual machine : : Then this looks like this is the instance UUID, a dash, and then it looks like some other information. So this is going to be a little bit trickier to build. So this is a good one for us to look at. In this case, we are going to try and recreate and match more correctly this what's being created as a rubric ID using the information from the virtual machine found in vCenter. So we can switch this over to the advanced mode, and we can see that we still have this VM instance UUID here and what that looks like. And we can go about trying to match these two things together. So the first part's pretty simple. This is always going to be virtual machine here. Then we have the VM instance UID, which looks very nice. But now we're missing this last part. And it looks like that is just the VM entity object ID. So we can actually add that as well. And now we can create this match between these two objects, even though the virtual machine object doesn't have the same exact parameters and properties that the rubric VM has. Additionally, another way we could evaluate doing this, instead of creating all of this to make a very large string, we could also evaluate shrinking down and pulling out just the instance UUID out of this field. And the way we could do that is by adding a regular expression to this field and trying to pull this out. And it could be something potentially as simple as pulling everything after those colons, but not the last, whatever. Let's see however many fields, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that sort of thing we could evaluate doing. Now, if we do go about this route, both of them have their trade-offs. Adding a regular expression will add time to the overall collection for every one of those that you have to parse that text out of. And similarly, having to have all of those fields filled in is another way. So there's a little bit of a trade-off both ways. You can, if you're concerned about timing of your collection, you can test both methods in order to see if one's going to be better than another by running the test connections or test collections and checking the times of those. And in this case, I'm going to leave it like this and save this. And now I have two different relationships that I defined for my rubric design.